So today, it's my pleasure to talk with Chief Executive Officer and founder of Woolf University, Joshua Broggie. Joshua is a scholar himself. I'm very intrigued to have an opportunity to talk to him about Nietzsche or Heidegger. He's studying German philosophy. But he also has some experience in university administration. And what's more important for us today, again, he's a chief executive officer of the Woolf University and also for-profit wing of this interesting partnership. I hope he will tell about that more. Woolf Incorporated, which is a venture company in IT. When you go to website of Woolf University, you would see a lot of colleges in different countries. So this is really, and they are not branches of one, as I understand, one central unit. So that's very intriguing, and we are looking forward to hear from Joshua and then to ask him how it's possible, what is innovation, what can we learn. Joshua, the floor is yours.
Many thanks. Really appreciate it, and glad to be here. Happy to talk about it. It's true. So I have two roles. One of my roles is as the CEO of Woolf Inc., which is the venture-backed technology company. Its goal as a profit-seeking organization is to return capital to shareholders, and then its overall job is to create software and intellectual property and patents related to software, mostly in the quality assurance space. That is different from my role as the head of institution of Woolf University and Woolf, where the goal is to make world-class higher education more accessible, to ensure that students have the best possible experience, to ensure that academics have academic freedom and produce scholarship of a high quality, and so on. Those institutions are related to the extent that Woolf Inc. provides software services to lower the administrative costs of Woolf University. So those are my two roles. It's maybe worth saying at the outset, Woolf was named after Virginia Woolf. And when I started Woolf, I was a faculty member at the University of Oxford, and I didn't, I spent a lot of time studying German philosophy and Greek philosophy, and I didn't want to do something that was falsely classicizing or old sounding, but not really. I wanted the proper 20th century, word, and we didn't want to name it after a place because we knew we wanted to create a global collegiate university that was really cosmopolitan in orientation. And Virginia Woolf wrote about what was required for academic freedom was 500 pounds in a room of one's own, and specifically for female academic freedom, which was a pressing issue in her day. And we didn't want to name the institution after a place, and we didn't want to name it after a man, as we felt that had been done many times. So a dear friend of mine, Dame Hermione Lee, who's a great Virginia Woolf scholar, and I were having conversations, and so there was maybe some inspiration there to land on Woolf. In any case, Woolf is a global collegiate university, and on the next slide, it says our mission is to increase access to world-class higher education and ensure it's globally recognized and transferable. We put quite a bit of thought into that. You could increase access to higher education, it might not be world-class, and so that would be one angle. You could do it and it wouldn't be globally recognized and transferable, and that would be another problem. Global recognition and transferability is really hard. That requires you to get governments aligned to what you are doing, and there's this sort of deep old infrastructure of accreditation. It probably goes back to licentiate and the Catholic Church and the ability to teach or something like this. It's been around for a long time in that sense, but it is related to immigration, and taxes, the right to operate, and so on. And there's a lot of governmental infrastructure around that. So that is part of what we do is navigate that infrastructure. So on the next slide, Woolf is a fully accredited global collegiate higher education institution. We do offer bachelor's degrees, master's degrees, as well as doctorates. And, you know, it's a really broad range of things that we cover. We do everything from synthetic biology on human lifespan extension and carbon capture, PhDs, and so on, to very large scale computer science programs enrolling thousands and thousands of students. And, you know, collegiate universities have been around for 1,000 years. So there's nothing new or innovative, I think, about creating a collegiate university. But we are maybe the first global collegiate university that is designed to create new member colleges on a regular basis. And so, you know, Oxford creates a new college about once every 20 or 40 years or so. So it's happening, and they're global, although all the colleges are concentrated in one small campus. Woolf's colleges are really around the world, and the students are around the world. So we have colleges, or, you know, concentrations of students in Philippines and, you know, North America, Eastern Europe, Western Europe, UK, Ireland, United States, Latin America. So there's just a very wide distribution in terms of where Woolf academics are thinking and operating. To do this, you know, we really had to build a digital operating system for the organization that would set out the kind of QA standards, the quality assurance and accreditation process. There's a tension that has to be constantly navigated for us as an organization between the central university or higher education institution, as it is technically in some jurisdictions, and the colleges themselves. And so on the one hand, the colleges have rights in our bylaws to complete academic freedom. They can propose any courses they want. They can elect whatever faculty they want, and so on. On the other hand, the central university has total control in the limited sense that you can only propose faculty that meet the central requirements. All curriculum has to go into the central university and be processed and approved by somebody with a PhD. And so there's a back and forth between what are the central requirements in order to maintain the standards which are requisite to being an accredited institution on the one hand, while on the other hand, allowing there to be a real diversity. So, you know, for an example, we don't set the tuition fee prices for our colleges. And so we have the same degree that you could come to Woolf to study between, you know, $2,000 and $50,000 US, depending on which college you decided to take it at. And so you can, you know, arrive at Woolf and pick your college. And so there's a real set of choice there for students. You know, on the next slide, you can see a little bit of the kind of technology work that we had to do. Some of this gets very technical and complex, but we basically ingest all of the learning content from any academic program across the entire system. And then we monitor as students are consuming approved content, which we benchmark to European regulatory standards. So we are EQF rating them. We are deciding what the intended learning outcomes are at a very granular level. We're talking about a quiz question or a PDF or a video that somebody would read. So this is extremely granular work. And it means that at any given time, we have millions of consumption events happening where students are clicking on PDFs to read, and we are deciding, is this academic peer-reviewed literature published in the last 5 years? Is it field leading? What are the intended learning outcomes here? How long will students spend on this? What intended, you know, prior learning does it imply? So all of that is happening millions and millions of times at any given time with students consuming content, and we are building a record of compliance on their behalf. And so that's just really critical to what we do, because you have to have a system that is extremely robust from a quality assurance perspective, if at the same time you are going to be globally distributed and have the level of innovation and curriculum that we think is important. So in the next slide, you can see, you know, some of the organizations that we partner with, for example, Upgrad, Scalar, GoIT. These are very fast-growing startups that have effectively sponsored colleges at Woolf bearing their names. And, you know, they teach many, many thousands of students. They are updating their curriculum sometimes as many as 1,000 times per week in terms of curriculum adjustments across their degrees. And we have a team of academics that has to process all of those adjustments, determine are the intended learning outcomes, the workload benchmarks, all of these sorts of things actually in line with the quality assurance standards before the proposals are approved and students can study them as progress in their degrees. So it's a significant data operation to conduct. But the result of that on the next slide is that Woolf degrees do have global recognition, including for immigration and citizenship. There are tax consequences, there are points on your visa, there are real world benefits today to studying in a degree program. And one way to look at that is to say universities have failed to be innovative in certain domains at the speed that's required in the age we live in. Maybe one way to measure this is, the total amount of writing that was ever created in human history up to like the invention of the internet is probably roughly what is produced on the internet every 2 or 3 days, or maybe every 10 minutes. It's going to be somewhere in that range, which is not a very big bound. It's like 80 years of YouTube content per day. Poof, 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 right? And so that world of information is exponentially larger and faster than the world of information in which most of the processes around quality assurance and curriculum design were created at standard universities. And so I think to operate at the speed of innovation and orientation towards human progress that we want, we do need to have a system that's robust enough to move a little bit faster. So in the next slide, we have a nice quote from one of the members of our Academic Advisory Council, Stephen Koslin, who's done great things with Minerva University and a number of other organizations that he's founded. But it is a kind of novel approach to potentially helping a very vast number of students and to be an engine of, I think, much needed change, at least in higher education. It's really a challenge of threading the needle between how do you maintain quality assurance from a central institutional perspective while ensuring there's academic freedom and a strong appetite for innovation, which kind of keeps the guardrails on students as well as curriculum quality. So in the next slide, really sort of dig into what is the accreditation management system that we built, which is the central hub governing everything at all Woolf colleges. And so everything from a student having their identity verified, a faculty member having their educational credentials verified, a college being constructed in a way that fits with our bylaws, a single PDF being added to a course, which is added to a degree that has certain parameters that must be fulfilled, which is added to a college, which has certain parameters that must be fulfilled. There are a whole series of kind of nesting criteria that have to be managed to a high degree of precision with a very strong record-keeping system in order to be ready under audit conditions to demonstrate the overall compliance of the institution. So it's like the flip side of innovation here is getting involved in a very boring piece of quasi paper-based administrative work. It is precisely actually the thing that I disliked the most about being an academic at Oxford was administration and kind of this kind of paperwork. And now it's really a focus of what I do because I think it's a kind of shackle on institutions holding them back. So on the next slide, we basically say Woolf built an innovative digital operating system for quality assurance. The Accreditation Management System, or AMS, handles all aspects of accreditation and kind of 24/7 compliance, running the entire journey from the creation of a college, the appointment of their faculty, the creation of a degree, the compliance of all the courses in that degree, students enrolling in all those courses, the progression of students across the degree, and finally to their graduation. We really had to make a comprehensive system to deal with all of that. And on the next slide, you can see sort of a short example of the almost activity feed or news feed, what's happening at an extremely granular level, where a degree is verified, the course is added to the degree, the academic board approves of of certain entry requirements to that course. The student applies and they meet the entry requirements, and then they begin studying, and they attend a synchronous meeting, or they consume a quiz, or all these things. We're building this extremely granular picture, down to the level of screenshotting the moment a student submits a piece of information or things like that. And when we support a student who's moving across borders, for example, we will sometimes be queried by a foreign government saying, well, we're not sure that the credits here are meeting the standards in our country or something like that. And we have on occasion simply pulled out the records and said, well, actually, here's the video of the viva voce examination of when the student passed their thesis defense or things like that. And then, the student goes through and they get the approval. So it's a very robust system. On the next slide, we just dig into it a little bit more. It's a source of truth for all learning activity that we do, and it's really there to make sure innovation can happen within boundaries. We don't get to define all those boundaries. Many of them are just set out within the rules of the jurisdictions that we operate in. And so, the first order of complexity for Woolf as an organization is that we're a collegiate organization. And so internally, we have these many colleges. The second order of complexity, which is a little bit more mind-bending, is that we actually own 5 collegiate higher education institutions. And so many of the colleges are actually members of multiple universities. And so we effectively sponsor a college in the name of the organization at the other organizations. And we will even do credit transfers between our own universities, which have articulation agreements between them under certain conditions between countries. So it's a level of complexity that's been rare from an infrastructure perspective to do it from a first principles basis to say, how do we get to a place where there's just extremely high quality governance and innovation happening at the same time? And the end result, though, for a student on the next slide is when you study at a Woolf college, you receive a degree certificate that contains both the name of the college and the name of the higher education institution. And then the signature of the head of the higher education institution, in this case, it's myself, and then the signature of the head of the college are both on that degree certificate. So that's roughly the system running from kind of approval of launching a new college or degree program or course all the way through to the student earning a degree. On the next slide, after building a system like that, where the granularity of record keeping for a given student and the sort of proof level of compliance with regulatory standards is so strong, you can begin doing some more risky things, or if not risky, innovative. And so on the next slide, we built a new system called StudyTrack. And the goal of StudyTrack is to make it possible for students learning online to convert their learning experience into academic credits for a degree. And so in some organizations, it's to be called the recognition of prior learning. And the idea is that certificate students deserve to have their studies converted to academic credits if they do, in fact, reach a level of academic credits. And so there are many organizations, including universities, that have certificate programs. And on the next slide, we talk a little bit about some of the things we've thought about. We can probably even go to the next slide, where the goal is, well, what if we built academic records of compliance at this level of granularity for people who are not in degree programs and not even enrolled in accredited courses? How close would some of those programs get to accreditation? And could we identify the gaps between those programs and a real academic program? And so as a higher education institution with degree awarding powers, we see exactly what the gap is. And so we will install a snippet of code with partners who want to offer teaching courses that are not quite at the right standard. They will produce an academic record like this, and then we will build remediation pathways for the student to go from, okay, you studied a bunch of boot campy information, and the boot camp is good, but it's not a master's degree. And so what would you need to do to take it from where it is today to get it to be a degree level course? And so you can identify with a very high degree of precision exactly what's missing for the student to go from, the level of a boot camp to say the level of a degree course. And when we do that, when we've already created the digital record, we can effectively convert the entire record into, if it reaches a standard, academic credits. If it doesn't reach the standard, into a workload counting towards academic credits, although there'll be remediation gaps. And that sounds like a potentially technical or trivial thing, but the consequence is, we have thousands of students today in degree programs at Woolf who actually started in non-degree programs, did not even know Woolf existed, and they began studying something, and somebody reached out to them and said, well, actually, the program you're in can count towards progress in a degree if you consider doing remediation work to elevate the standard. And so you have to take maybe exams or you have to do other things. So that's been a really big innovation for us as an organization. And then on the next slide, just to sort of close things out, we've seen the way these kinds of programs can stack into degree outcomes. And so sometimes we'll issue smaller degrees. So, if you're going for a master's degree, a third of a master's degree would be a postgraduate certificate, or 2/3 would be a postgraduate diploma. But we're really interested, once we've got down to the level of very granular information around compliance and EQF levels, ILOs, all these sort of regulatory frameworks, how do we stack information up to lead to an outcome for a student that can be really impactful for their life if they earn a degree certificate and want to immigrate to another country or looking for a job? What do you, it's like there are badges, but badges are just sort of stickers, and they don't do a lot. Whereas if you can actually take that information and stack it into a real regulated degree outcome, that's another level of kind of quality assurance. And that is something that we are very experienced at, very good at Woolf. Okay, so that's everything that I think I want to say. Those are really ways of getting into the weeds and saying, look, to create a global collegiate university system, you have to balance the diversity of the colleges and their academic freedom with the central institutional standards. And to do that, you need to be very confident about your quality assurance system. And to innovate at speed and scale when you're working in a regulated space means that you also need to have very clear guardrails around what you can and can't do. And so we've really operated in that framework to try and create a system that makes it possible for the end academic to propose a new degree program and have it be accredited very quickly and recognized in 60 countries, which is where we have kind of default recognition today. Or for a student to come in and take an extremely innovative curriculum that is sometimes years ahead of what will show up in a university curriculum, and have it be fully recognized as graduating with a real degree. So that's where we're operating today. It's a real privilege to be involved because we have colleges all over the world. We see such a diversity of degree programs from bachelor's to doctorate, and it's real pleasure to work with all of our colleges and the students that are there.